It's time to talk Detroit Lions football on the Ourlads Football Network. That's right, Detroit Lions football in December. As the Lions are taking on the New York Jets. And since we talk a lot about the Jets here on this channel, what a perfect time to ask Jeff Risdon to come back and talk actual in-season football, meaningful in-season football between both the Lions and the Jets. How's it going, Jeff?
It's great to be with you and talking something besides draft in December. It's been a long time for both of us on that front. It's been way too long. And hey, even if neither team makes the playoffs, like this year has already been a resounding success. Yes. Like we're playing meaningful football in December, right. Like legitimately meaningful football in December. It's been 6 years for the Lions since that happened. It's been a very long time.
And it's a strange feeling, but it's obviously a great feeling, and it's also interesting how quickly, I don't know, I mean, maybe not for the Lions because of the fans, because the fan base for both the Jets and the Lions this season's been different, I think, as far as the reactions, because pretty much off the get-go, the Jets have kind of been already playing above water. But the Lions got off to such a slow start that I would guess there was a lot of bickering, the usual issues and all that kind of stuff that you dealt with early in the season. Now, all of a sudden, all of that's gone away. And now the last couple of weeks, Jet Nation is going crazy. They're divided about Mike White and Zach Wilson. And it's like, why are you guys... What's the problem here? You're 7-6, and you should be talking to be thankful that you're all actually in a playoff. But that's the difference between the Lions fan base this season and the Jets. Right now, the Lions fan base must be on top of the world.
Oh, it's unbelievable. We had the number one overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft after week 7. And now they're 6-7. They've won 5 of 6. They just beat the Vikings. I won't say it was convincingly, but the game was never really in doubt. Like Minnesota never led. They iced it with a late field goal, which was great to see because in the first meeting against the Vikings, we attempted a late field goal that was all kinds of bad and wound up making us lose. So yeah, it's been a very big sea change, and it took a few weeks for a lot of folks to really get on. But I think the last really, you go back to the Thanksgiving loss against Buffalo, where the Lions played toe-to-toe with the good Bills team that played well that day. And look, the Bills won. There's several victories, but it sure felt like the Lions that was a validation test for them. Yeah. It's the first time they were on national TV all year. Yes. So it was like, oh, they're not bad. Like the rest of the country sort of saw like, hey, man, what Dan Campbell's trying to do really is working. And then, beating the Jaguars the way they did, 40-14 in a game where they scored every time they got the ball. It's the first time they'd done that in a very long time. And this past week, they scored 25 or more points for the 5th week in a row. That's the first time they've done that since 1954.
Wow.
That's when my dad was in diapers. So that's a very long time ago. That's an impressive run. And it's been great. It's been an awesome ride. The fans were so ready for it. Look, the Matt Patricia years were a very dark time in Detroit, and it's taken some time to crawl out of that. But we're seeing some light now, and we're running to it, baby.
Let's talk about the combination of kind of what we talked about early in the season, because it's kind of fun to know that a lot of the stuff that we talked about early in the season about the potential of this team has actually come to fruition. So, and it's there if anybody wants to check it out. Matter of fact, I'll probably even throw the video in there towards the end of the show if you want to check and see what we talked about in the preseason about the possibilities of this team. All of that is now coming to light, and that includes having Ben Johnson and what he did at the end of last season to take over as coordinator and to be the man this entire season. You just talked about the points that they're scoring. Also kind of ties into Jared Goff. We talked about how much that he actually played better than people. They didn't know how much better he played at the end of last season. I think they looked at the record and it's the same old Lions, and they didn't understand that what you guys understood and that we talked about in the preseason, that there was something there, that something actually looked like, hey, you know what? Maybe we could win with Jared Goff, and now it's actually happening.
It is, and Goff deserves a lot of credit. He's played very, very well. He has not turned the ball over in 5 weeks. That's a
Wow.
huge key. Some of this is related to the health of the wide receiving core. Amon-Ra St. Brown is back. He missed a game and was really slowed in another. Josh Reynolds and DJ Chark really deserve a lot of credit for getting healthier and helping, because Ben Johnson runs a very space and timing style of passing game where you've got to be when and where you need to be every time. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work. But when it works, it's beautiful. And you're seeing DJ Chark being able to get off the line and get to where he needs to be a lot better. He can change speeds a little bit. Josh Reynolds being a little bit more physical now that his back isn't sore anymore. And it's really working. And the spatial dynamics of Ben Johnson's offense are really, truly cool to watch. I actually just got done watching the All-22 of the game against the Vikings. And, man, like the coordination of routes and movement, and the subtlety with which Jared Goff will look, and he's getting better at this every week, of looking one way, looking the safety, holding the safety off. But am I holding it off? Maybe I am going to throw there, because he does that every so often. It's become a very difficult offense to defend, a very diverse offense to defend. And man, with adding Jameson Williams in the mix,
Yeah.
with the way,
Perfect timing,
it's a fun offense. And I have to give Goff, I am still not sold on Jared Goff long term, but 2022 he's great. 2023, if this keeps rolling, sure thing, give me more of that. But he's played very smart and more capable football than I think most people ever gave him credit for.
So do you think then that what the Lions might do future-wise, and we're not going to talk too much about the future on this show, but is that maybe they go about, could be in this draft, maybe take a quarterback in the second or third or fourth round. Goff's fine. We're fine with him for a couple of years, but we don't want to just be all in on Goff. Let's just take another guy, maybe develop him for a few years.
100%. And keep in mind, Jared Goff is the only quarterback that's on the roster after 2022 ends. So they have to get somebody in. My personal school of thought is I would much rather them draft the best developmental prospect that they can when they choose to do it, and have him be the backup, let Goff start in 2023. He's under contract through 2024. If it takes 2 seasons to get an Anthony Richardson or a Max Duggan or whoever
there you go.
Up to speed, then you've got your backup. It's better than signing, if you watched Monday Night Football, you saw Colt McCoy. Why are you paying for that? I don't want that. I'd rather have somebody that has some long-term upside.
Sure.
And I think the Lions see it that way too. So I don't know about their first pick, but remember, they have 2 first-round picks. They have 2 second-round picks.
That's awesome.
They've got some flexibility to dip into a quarterback there, and they absolutely need to. This is a team that has backed up Goff with David Blau, Tim Boyle, and now Nate Sudfeld. It's just not inspiring.
No. Well, and that's another thing we talked about was the organization. And we've talked about that for 2 years now. And we saw it last year. And the results on the field, it didn't show yet. But we could just tell that for the first time, and then obviously into this year with a few more changes on the staff, that they had the right organization in place. And it starts there. It doesn't always start with the coach. It starts with the GM, and even above that with who's head of operations. How do you flood your team and your front office with really smart, good, personnel guys that are going to, not only add the type of talent that your team has right now, but stability and just overall smarts. And Dan Campbell, I mean, who would have thought Dan Campbell would have been a really smart hire, but he's just a perfect fit for this team.
He really is. And he played in Detroit, and I think that matters. And I think he understands the mindset of what the fans have gone through. He was here in 2008 when the team lost all 16 games. He understands the passion and the frustration of the fan base, and he's working very actively to get it done. He and GM Brad Holmes, for 2 dudes who had never met before they were hired together. It's weird. They both use the phrase cut from the same cloth, independently and often. And they really do. They are absolutely from the same seamstress, man. They are woven together. They see football the same way. They have enough dissension and pushback that they're not just going to be yes people. And there are other people in the building. John Dorsey is in the building. Ray Agnew is in the building. Deuce Staley, as the assistant head coach, has an unusual amount of power for what you would expect of a running backs coach normally. They have a lot of really fun discussions and heated discussions, but they all see like, okay, we want our offense to represent this. We want our defense to represent this. We want our special teams to be like this. We want our draft profile to include these types of traits and exclude these types of traits. And they're all really uniform about that. It makes things so much easier. And look, the coaching staff, it's a ton of former players. Everybody knows Deuce Staley, Antoine Randall L. Kelvin Shepard, the linebackers coach, is a rising star. Hank Fraley on the offensive line. He might be the offensive line coach of the year if they have such a thing. I don't actually know if they have such a thing. If they do, he deserves it. But they're all former players, and they're all really good teachers. Like, one of the things that Dan Campbell has stressed is player development is going to be very important. And that allows Brad Holmes to go out and get a player that, okay, maybe he's got some athletic traits, but he needs a lot of work. Well, they're getting that work and that development, and you're seeing it with guys like James Houston, Kirby Joseph, Josh Paschal, even the guys from last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to just astound, and he's one of the best receivers in the league right now. He's a 4th-round pick in his 2nd season. The uniformity of mindset and dedication to their collective culture, it really is important, and it is finally working.
Okay, now I want to ask you about early on in the season, because I was just surprised knowing the conversations that we've had about why there needed to be some sort of vote of confidence with Dan Campbell after the slow start. Look, I could just imagine what the Lion fans were saying at that point in time, because they're just used to it. And maybe they just felt, oh, this ain't working. Because he didn't, Dan Campbell doesn't have a track record of hit. And I'm sure there was a lot of guys who were fans who were not really unsure. And they're probably still unsure whether or not he's the guy. So once they start losing, it's, this isn't working. And so there needed to be a vote of confidence. And there was also needed to be, I believe, a vote of confidence at the same time about Aaron Glenn.
Definitely.
I just didn't understand it because, again, we talked about this and it just felt like, especially last year, we remember talking about last year and all the close losses, and it just seemed like they were so close, but they just, okay, next year. And then they got up to such a slow start. And it's like, that's okay. It's early. This is the NFL. Sure enough, this is why you need to be patient. Nobody's talking about firing Dan Campbell or Aaron Glenn anymore, but talk about what was going on early in the season and just how you talked about it with the fans. What kind of debates you got into with the fans at that point in time?
Yeah, so it became a very tough sell on Dan Campbell after a couple of early games. The first Minnesota game, he absolutely made a terrible call at the end of the game, and he says it still haunts him and will haunt him until he dies, and I believe him on that. He made a terrible decision to kick a meaningless field goal, and it gave too much time. He still doesn't have the greatest of game management skills, but look, he's in his 2nd season. It is getting better, pronouncedly better, and he showed it at the end of this past Minnesota game. He understands better usage of the run play, better usage of the sidelines in the middle of the field, and when to call certain things. So that is getting better. So that's become an easier sell. The defense, and this is where Aaron Glenn deserves a lot of credit, because he was not having a good early season. This team was dead last by a wide margin in everything. They are now, I want to say, they're 4th in defensive DVOA over the last 6 weeks. Which is what Football Outsiders does to adjust for level of competition and everything. They have played so much better. A lot of it gets attributed to the firing of defensive backs coach Aubrey Pleasant. Oh. I will say that, and Aubrey's a good coach, and I think they were having a lot of communication issues where 3 of the 5 guys back there would be playing man, and the other 2 would be playing cover 1, or one would be playing cover 1 and cover 2. Like, it was chaos too often. So it needed to happen. But I think what happened was the players, they liked Aubrey Pleasant, and they knew that Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell liked Aubrey Pleasant. They're like, oh, crap, we just got a good dude fired. Like, we gotta get this together, otherwise we ain't going to be here long. And they do have a lot of camaraderie and chemistry. They're all a very young team growing up together. And they sort of collectively came to that, like, okay, it's on us too. And it's helped. It's given more confidence to Aaron Glenn to dial more things up. You saw Jerry Jacobs come from a wide corner, loop inside the slot corner to get a sack last week. Like that, those are things that you couldn't do earlier in the season. So they're getting much more creative with it.
Okay.
It is healthy too. They're getting healthier, and that's so critical. Getting Jerry Jacobs is their number 2 corner. He didn't play the first 6 weeks. He was out with an ACL that he tore last year. Josh Paschal, their 2nd-round pick, didn't play the first 6 weeks. He was still on the PUP list from off-season sports hernia surgery. He's been good. John Kaminsky, really, really good the first 2 games. Missed the next 4 games. Comes back. All of a sudden, Aidan Hutchinson starts playing a whole lot better when John Kaminsky's standing to his inside shoulder. Like, that's not coincidental. Like, they got all these guys back and healthy, and they're staying relatively healthy, and that has helped a ton. We are a team, believe it or not, that's actually getting healthier as the season goes on. This brought back Romeo Okwara. Played his first game against Minnesota. Didn't do a lot, as is custom for a guy in his first game in this system, but they're adding a guy who got double-digit sacks like out of the ether late in the season. It's kind of cool to see because it's usually been the other direction, especially the last 2-3 years where the Lions were every year in the top 5 in amount of salary cap at the end of the season that was spent on injured reserve players. This year, I think right now they're 19th, and a lot more of that's it's coming back. The number 3 running back, Craig Reynolds, is about to come back. He should play this weekend. These are things that didn't happen in the past for Detroit. And it's all a very happy confluence of events that we're excited about.
Jeff, I got to tell you that this, I say half of that clearly has to do with whether your team is winning or not. That's just the way that it is. And I know maybe some people, maybe don't buy that, but it's just a fact, is that there's not a coincidence why teams that usually are pretty bad have a laundry list of players on season-ending injured reserve. They don't want to rush back. Why should they rush back? The team's no good.
Romeo Okwara is a great example because this is a guy, he tore his Achilles in week 4 last year. This is a 290-pound dude who relies on his explosiveness. Like, that's a tough injury for a guy with that sort of body type and style. He could have easily stayed and rested it out, but he wanted to come back, and I do have to think that there's something to that. Like, if this team was, 3-10, he'd still be on IR.
Absolutely. And some of that also, is good luck. And that's what you need. You have to be relatively healthy in this league.
What's that?
I hear you. Now, speaking of injuries, though, Julian Okwara and Tracy Walker. Now, of course, Vaitai hasn't played all season. Yeah. But Okwara and Walker, now, are they also out? Are they not coming back?
They will. Tracy Walker certainly will be back. He tore his Achilles. Julian Okwara is out till at least week 17. He hyperextended his elbow. Everybody saw it in the Buffalo game. He went to brace himself trying to sack Josh Allen, and his elbow just went. So I wouldn't expect him back. He's a guy this is his 3rd season. This is his 5th time on IR in 3 seasons. Probably going to say it's a season ender.
Yeah, because the Tracy Walker injury, though, that like you were talking about a lot of the injuries early on in the season. Unfortunately, he's not coming back, but that was a big one.
It really hurt a lot. And Kirby Joseph, the 3rd-round rookie, stepped in. It took him a couple of weeks to get his feet wet, but I'll give safeties coach, now defensive backs coach Brian Duker a lot of credit, and I will give Deshaun Elliott, a free agent of little regard, came out of Baltimore, guy that's always hurt, has played very well and has been a really good stabilizing veteran force to help Kirby. Kirby, I believe, is 2nd or 3rd amongst all rookies now in forced takeaways. So and Aidan Hutchinson is in that group too. I think they have the same amount. So they're getting it done with some impact play. Look, Kirby Joseph is not going to tackle anybody in space. That's not what he does. But as a cover safety who can play both man and all sorts of zone, he's been real good right away. And that's exactly what Tracy Walker did. So next year we're hopeful to have a happy problem where who plays where. Yeah,
of course.
These are things that we haven't had to discuss in Detroit in a long time.
And then again, you talked about 2 more first-round picks, 2 more second-round picks. So it just keeps adding on. We'll talk about the rookie class in general because the headliner obviously is Hutchinson. And we're going to see 2 of the top defensive rookies on Sunday, not going up against each other, but they're going to be on the same field together. Hutchinson for Detroit and Sauce Gardner for the Jets. So talk about just how valuable of addition Hutchinson's been.
So they should be the 2 front runners for the defensive rookie of the year. And I know Houstonians will tell you that Jalen Petrie has been that good, but their team's just awful.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hutchinson, I think the people who thought that he was going to be athletically limited have been bitterly disappointed because he has shown he is every bit as athletic as he needs to be. He made an inside spin move on Brian O'Neill. Pretty good right tackle, by the way, Brian O'Neill of the Vikings, where O'Neill barely touched him. And he made the sack made the pressure. Kirk Cousins threw the ball away in a panicked fit in 2.1 seconds. Like that's impacting the offense. He's been really, really effective. He's getting better at getting off blocks earlier and making sure that he's out in space to like stop a screen or an outside run. He's getting better at that all the time. I want to say that he's up to 7.5 sacks. I don't actually have the stats in front of me, but he's right around that, which leads all rookies. He has 2 interceptions. He has 3 passes defended. He's forced a fumble and recovered a fumble. He's having a heck of a year. And it's getting better all around all the time, and the splash plays are still coming. So we're very happy. Look, I know the Jets are happy with Sauce Gardner, and you should be. Sure. He's been great, and I'm kind of happy about that because I thought he would be great. So I'm looking forward. That's a fun matchup this weekend because I'm curious where Sauce is going to go. Because the Lions have an interesting group of receivers, and they're all like physically diverse, like Jamison Williams, the long speedster, DJ Chark, more physical downfield guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown, slot who murders you in the middle of the field. Josh Reynolds, really good on comeback routes and things like that. Like they're gonna make Sauce pick his poison this weekend. So I'm sure he will be up to the challenge, but I'm curious as to how that's going to play out.
It's so far the Jets haven't since they play a lot of zone. They haven't really said, okay, Sauce, you go on this guy. Sometimes they'll do that, like especially if they're in a game and they realize, well, we've got an issue here, and we've got to immediately figure out what to do about that guy. All right, Sauce, get on that guy now. But other than that, because DJ Reed has played tremendous on the opposite side.
Yes, he has. So I noticed him in watching film of a couple of things like that.
Yeah, so
that guy's pretty good too.
So that's why the Jets defense now. What was the last defense the Lions played that was as good as the Jets?
I'm going to give Buffalo some credit there.
Yeah, they're top 10.
I think the Jets front is stronger. Although the Lions played that Buffalo without both their starting guards were out, and Frank Ragnow probably shouldn't have played, but he did, and he's the center. He's been banged up all season. He's not having the greatest of seasons, but man, he is so tough. And the Jonah Jackson, the left guard, is the Penei Sewell fans will hunt me down, but Jonah Jackson's the best offensive lineman on this team right now. He is an absolute Pro Bowler, deserves All-Pro mention this season. He has not allowed a sack since week 13 of last year, and he is the best run blocker, period, on the interior offensive line anywhere in the NFL this year.
That should be a nice matchup with Quinnen Williams then.
Yes, and we're hopeful that Quinnen's a little slowed up.
Yeah, he is. He's a power guy. So, but yeah, that's something that could affect him, no question about it. But yeah, that is the thing that the Jets have going for them. They just have waves of defensive linemen. That's all they do is they just come after you up front. That's why I think it should be an interesting matchup, obviously, with the Lions playing as good as they have. Now, I saw a quote about Dan Campbell saying something along the lines of, he hopes that there isn't like a letdown this week. Did he actually say that? I mean, I was a little bit. Why did
something to that effect? Yeah, and basically he just wants to it was a very big deal to not have the Vikings clinch the NFC North in Detroit.
And that's the thing. As Jet fans, you have to realize, obviously, is that we're talking about those are division opponents. That is a division. That's like if the Jets had just beaten the Buffalo Bills. Hey, we can't have a letdown in next week, no matter who we play.
Yeah. And it had been, so the last 4 games between the Lions and the Vikings have been decided by 10 total points. And the Lions lost 3 of those. And 2 of those they absolutely blew. Like they had the game won and lost. Greg Joseph hit a 63-yard field goal after he had missed 2 from inside 35 in the same game. Yeah. So that was really frustrating. So there's a definite chance for an emotional letdown. I'm going to say that Dan Campbell's got a good enough coaching feel that's not going to plague the Lions.
Yeah.
What's going to plague them would be the Jets defense, quite honestly, because it's a really good unit. And they know that they're in for a challenge with what Robert Saleh and the Jets defense dials up. It's going to be a very fun chess match to watch the Lions offense, which is top 5 in the league, going against the Jets defense, which even as the team is faltering, they're still playing pretty good football.
Yeah, it's not the defense. Yeah, the defense have had some issues here or there, but again, the last couple of weeks, but they're playing the Vikings offense and the Bills offense. So, but the Lions offense is playing just as good as those teams right now. So that's why you have to worry, no question about that. But it also is something that the team will be on the road, obviously, Detroit, and it's not just a road game being a dome team, but it's also the fact that it's going to be in December and it's going to be in the Northeast. And I'm just looking at the weather, and it looks like it's going to be a high of 38. No conditions, should be sunny, but 38. That is a 35-degree difference from being in
a cold weather game.
Yeah, so your offense is not going to just not. The Lions defense is going to have to play better or as good, if not better, than they have played lately, because I don't expect this game to be like. I would think if this was in Detroit, I could see this game being high 20s, 30s. I really could, because both offenses I could see playing well. No knock on either defense, but in these conditions, I think it's going to be a little tougher.
I agree with you on that, and so the Lions did play the Giants earlier this season. They haven't been bad outside this year. They haven't been outside much, so there's that. But
okay.
I think honestly, I think the bigger worry from a Detroit standpoint is the turf. That turf is notorious. And that's actually in our podcast Slack chat. It's one of the first things that came up is like, this is a week where maybe you don't play your, like, if the game is out of hand one way or the other, like, you sit everybody that's important because you don't want that turf to rise up and bite it. And we saw Sterling Shepard's season end there on that turf. Like, it's.
Yeah, they're going to fix it next year. So exactly I wish they'd go back to grass, but they're not going to do that. But it'll be fixed.
The technology that they've come in the turf department has come a long way. We're also looking at that in Detroit. We still have the turf that's made primarily from recycled tires, so you do see the black pellets sticking up. Those are known carcinogens, and they're terrible if they get into your eyes or lungs. So that's going to be something that we're having that discussion in Detroit too. And Detroit has seen its fair share of injuries as well. I don't want to just cast the ball on New York there, but it is something that is in the back of the Lions' minds. I can tell you that.
Okay. Now let's talk about a couple quick things before I let you go. If it does get down to a close game, Badgley, how's he been?
He had made 14 straight kicks of over 40 yards until he did miss one right before halftime. Fortunately, the Lions cleaned that up. Aidan Hutchinson sacked Kirk Cousins very quickly on the next play, so that was no threat. He made the game sealer at the end.
So he's been going good.
Out. So I would say that he's missed 2 kicks. He's 13 of 15 in Detroit on field goals. 12 of the 13 have been like dead solid, perfect, like no question whatsoever. And one of them just kind of eased in and actually grazed the left upright. So he's been solid. He's been pretty good. I will say, long snapper Scott Daly has not been sharp lately. Jack Fox, the pro, is the highest paid punter in the league for a reason. He's also a really good holder, and he's been tested on that lately.
Okay.
So that is something to watch. If you've got specifically a field block, it's a good time to try to use that sort of a play because Daly, he's good, but he's been a little high a few times. So keep an eye on that if that happens. But other than that, the Lions' special teams have been very good. Caleb Freeman as a return man is really starting to find his own. And I will say, Malcolm Rodriguez, look, everybody loves Rodrigo playing linebacker. He might be the best special teams blocker on the Lions too. And CJ Moore, you saw the trickeration last week. The Lions will run trick punts. They will go for it on 4th and 8 from their own 38. They will do these things. So the Jets are going to have to be really sharp and prepared for all these situations. When it's 4th and 6 at the 39-yard line, the defense runs off the field, but the offense is staying out there. Like they're gonna do that.
Okay.
So your special teams coach is gonna have to be very aware of what's going on this weekend.
And Rodriguez, another guy, another rookie we talked about when we talked after the draft about a player,
Greg,
a sleeper
so
to keep an eye on. And
he's so fun.
He's come through. So glad to see that. Okay, so as I close out, two last questions. One regarding the playoffs. It was a bad thing that the Giants and Washington tied, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because the Lions have the tiebreaker with both of them.
Yeah.
And they only need to get one of them.
And now it's like the tiebreaker doesn't matter now.
It doesn't because they tied. Yeah. Now we have to get ahead of them. So the Lions are 6-7. Washington and New York are 7-6-1 or 7-5-1. They play this weekend. So the winner of that, the Lions can't catch, basically. The loser, and I think the Commanders are going to win. So I'll just say that it's the Giants from that standpoint. The Lions would have to get one game ahead of the Giants, and they still also have to catch the Seahawks. So the Seahawks are 7-6. The Seahawks hold the tiebreaker with the Lions, though. So the whole tiebreaker situation, they set it up nicely, and then it all blew up in their face. Yeah. So that tie was lethal to the Lions. If that tie didn't happen, if there was a winner and a loser in that game, I'd feel really strongly that the Lions would get in. But now,
now
they're going to need a lot lot to get
unless
in.
They tie again.
They could.
Maybe that'll help.
Stranger things have happened. This is a weird year.
You never know.
I mean, we've watched a lot of weird football.
Because to tell you the truth, and it wasn't until after I realized that with Detroit, that overtime game between those two, those coaches were awfully conservative. It's almost like they were okay with tying. And I guess looking back at it, I guess I could see why now. They just because Washington, I remember that they were like they had a chance to move the ball 2 minutes, third down at 3rd and 10, I think at the 10 or something. We're punting. We're gonna. I mean, who does that in the NFL overtime? Nobody, unless you're okay with tying.
Yeah, they both played not to lose instead of to win, and Detroit curses them for that. But so that sets up this weekend their game. You better believe that everybody in Detroit is going to have an eye over there watching that one to see. And I think, generally speaking, the way the two teams are headed, most Lions fans want Washington to win and just keep going. And okay, we're not going to catch the Commanders.
Because you feel they're more equipped to run the table in a way.
Yeah. They're playing some pretty good football right now. I'll give them some credit. But the Lions have to catch the Giants or the Seahawks. There's one spot for those three teams, assuming, again, that Washington wins. I don't trust the Giants to win more than one of their final games. Possible. Seattle, I think, splits 2-2. If the Lions go 4-0 or even 3-1, they got a shot. And that's
what I was going to ask you.
It starts with the Jets Sunday, and the Jets are certainly no pushover. They're the most difficult team left on the schedule. Detroit, after the Jets, they play Carolina, then they finish with Chicago and Green Bay. The one is in Green Bay, the finale. Who knows what's going on with Green Bay at that point? Aaron Rodgers might not even show up at the stadium. Sure. Who knows? He might just walk out, but he also could come out and throw 6 touchdowns in his final game in a Packers uniform. Any of these things are possible. So we got to take it one at a time. And if the Jets win this game.
That's what I wanted to ask you, is that even if the Lions lose, I still think they have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs by running through the rest of their schedule.
They do. They will have to do that, but they will need some help from who Seattle plays. And interestingly, the last game for the Seahawks is the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, it's not a good matchup.
And the Lions have the Rams' first-round pick. That could be the difference. Like, if the Rams win, the Lions go to the playoffs. If the Rams lose, the Lions could get from like the 7th pick to the 2nd pick.
So at least they have something out of that.
Yeah, so it's sort of a no-lose situation.
Prize.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be bad to get Jalen Carter as a consolation prize. I think I'd take that instead of getting whoever comes at 6'7", Miles Murphy or somebody like that. Yeah, I don't want. I want this team to make the playoffs.
Of course,
I think that's a validation for Dan Campbell being the first team to ever start 1-6 and make the postseason. Yeah, and build momentum for next year. Look, this is the youngest roster in the league that's playing right now. Look, they are really building something that can be special, and it's young players all coming together. It's young coaches all coming together. I think getting into the postseason, it would be a great validation for that. And hey, like, they'd probably wind up playing the Vikings. They they can beat the Vikings.
Of course.
Like they really
it's the
can.
NFC.
So it's not absurd.
As long as you don't play the Eagles, any game is winnable.
No, Eagles are they're
as long as you don't play the Eagles, then you have a chance to, and you won't play the Eagles in the first round anyway. So whoever you play in the first round, you will be able to beat. Maybe not San Francisco, but then again,
I wouldn't count on it, but it's the potential's there.
Potential's there, and all you want to do is get there. That's all. Just taste it.
Same. I'm sure it's the same for the Jets.
All.
Like we got to get in.
That's all. Just get in, enjoy it, get experience. You're not winning the Super Bowl, but the quicker you get the playoff experience, the better. So.
Yeah, maybe Joe Burrow gets hurt, or
you never know.
His offensive line has a bad
You
day.
just never know. That's the thing. That's why you keep fighting.
That's right. That's why you got to get in.
Yeah.
You can't win it if you're not in it. That's what the lottery ads always tell us here. It's true of the playoffs too.
That's it. All right. So I appreciate it as always, Jeff. I'm glad that we actually spent a majority of our time together talking about a regular season game and regular season football. And I hope this is a recurring theme, because I think it's going to be a recurring theme.
I do too. I don't think these teams are going anywhere, especially if the Jets figure out the quarterback situation.
Yeah, that's the last step. And
we're happy that that's your problem.
That's true. Maybe not this week again, because the fans are just all giddy over Mike White. I'm a little bit reserved. I still think he's qualified to lead them to the postseason this season, but long term, I don't see that.
I think I think he's not a bad guy to have in your building, but I'm not sure that I would rely on him to be your long-term solution.
And Detroit may be feeling the same way, that a lot more proven Goff, but somebody that, as we said in the beginning of the interview, somebody that, hey, we're comfortable with him for a couple of years if we need him. So.
And I'll tell you what, if Goff can perform the way he has lately against the Jets defense that everybody in Detroit respects, that's going to just go further to cement Jared Goff as, I'm not going to say the permanent long-term starter, but the question about 2023 is already gone.
Yes.
Like he will be the starter next year, no question about it. But then it's okay. His contract's up after 2024. Do we give him more money then? That's the pivot point, especially if the good games keep coming. And it's weird to have those sorts of discussions because we haven't had that in a while.
And look, if the Lions do win on Sunday, I honestly can't imagine that they don't make the postseason. I think this is this is just like a bonus game for them in my mind. This is that you win this game, and with the schedule coming up, how do you not make the playoffs? Just as long as you keep playing like this, I don't see how you don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't want to take the Panthers lightly because they have been playing better lately too.
But Detroit's better right now.
Lions are a better team than the Panthers.
Detroit's better right now, and especially if they can beat a team like the Jets. Because again, remember, it's NFC, AFC. AFC's tougher this season. Everybody knows that. So on the road, cold environment. There's a lot going against Detroit this week. That if they can overcome that, and look, there's respect. I think they're the favorite in the game.
They are. It opened with the Jets as the favorite. It's now swung the other way, which is that's crazy to me. It really is.
Well, it worked last week, so
it did. It did indeed.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Greg.